get going. Hi, and happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. And welcome to the rvatech Tech It Yourself webinar series. My name is Lori Jennings. I am on the board of rvatech, and I get to work with programs. I'm so honored to get to work with this panel today. Where we're going to be talking about the 2021 tech trends and challenges. Our panelists today are T.I.Y, the CIO of the Federal Reserve System, Ankit Mathur, co-founder and CTO of Roundtrip, and Mike Lempner, VP of Engineering and Technology at Mission Lane. And then our moderator today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Vinny Schoenfelder, the CTO at CapTech Consulting. Vinny currently serves as the CTO with over 25 years of industry experience. Vinny's CTO role is external facing, helping the organization define services and serving as a technical strategist and solution architect on key engagements. Vinny leads innovation for CapTech, and as a thought leader, he meets with current and prospective clients, vendors, and industry analysts to discuss current approaches to solving critical business challenges. During the course of Vinny's career, he has been a frequent speaker at Fortune 500 companies and technology conferences across North America, and he has been engaged with clients across North America, Europe, and Canada. Welcome, Vinny. Welcome, panelists. And I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to start with just a brief intro on the topic, and then I'd like to do a quick panelist introduction as well. As everyone knows, 2020 was a challenging and interesting year in many ways. Most notably COVID, and it provided a catalyst to a lot of change operationally, for employees, for customer engagement, for innovation. And so we're going to touch on a bit of those topics today, but not necessarily just be looking into the past, but also looking forward to say, what have we learned from those changes and those experiences that are changing the way these companies are thinking about the future. So with that, let's do some quick intros and we'll dive in. Gada, why don't you begin?
Thank you, Vinny, and very happy to be here on this panel with this great team. T.I.Y, the system CIO for the Federal Reserve System, responsible for IT and technology across the Federal Reserve.
Ankit?
Great to be here. My name is Ankit Mathur. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Roundtrip. We work with hospitals and health systems to coordinate non-emergent medical transportation to make sure that those who in need can get access to healthcare. I'm responsible for everything related to technology, infrastructure, software engineering, software development, all of our security as well. Great to be here.
Thank you. And Mike?
Thanks, Vinny. I'm Mike Lempner. I'm the VP of Engineering and Technology at Mission Lane, and we are a fintech that's focused on helping the 100 million consumers who are underserved in their ability to kind of have access to financial services products or traditional financial services products.
Gotcha. Great. So like I said in the beginning, we are looking back 12 months to see what changed and how that affects you moving forward. I guess a start off question and a premise really. Macroeconomics aside, I know certain industries were hit harder than others, but macroeconomics aside, it's always been my believing that if you do things correctly, do things well, put the discipline and rigor in, there's unexpected dividends that get paid. So people who already had empowered teams, people who already had modern methodologies and architectures were able to respond more quickly. So, and I think we did see that in many areas. So my question to you guys is, what had you done, what had you invested in previously that really set you up to quickly respond to COVID and other challenges in 2020? Mike, since you went last, I'll let you go first.
Okay. Yeah, so I think one of the things that really benefited us when COVID occurred was just being 100% cloud-based. Having the ability to just kind of ramp up and scale and pivot pretty quickly became very important for us. There were certain things, and I think that's one of the the side effects of COVID and the pandemic is that we kind of recognized a little bit more so now that there's a lot of like unexpected and unknowns out there. And so our ability to pivot as a business becomes increasingly important for us. And the cloud, as one part of technology, allows us to do that more so. We identified a handful of technologies and platforms that we wanted to set up very quickly once COVID hit. And because of the cloud, we were able to do that very, very rapidly. And it made it that much simpler, and particularly when we were kind of using, SaaS platforms that we just needed to integrate with. So that happened much quicker. It may have been on our roadmap already, but we were able to accelerate it and go that much faster.
Yeah, I'm going to put a little bit more of that back on you as a compliment to say people can implement cloud poorly. So a lot of that has to do with a good architecture and good approach to cloud, which you should feel proud of. Cloud certainly is a catalyst to more modern frameworks because of what it provides, but it does take, again, a discipline and rigor to do it well. So good on you for that. Ankit, how would you answer the same question?
Yeah, similar cloud-based architecture, I think that really helped us scale a lot of our services, our workers, especially as we had an onset of a lot of health systems coming onto our platform very early on to respond to COVID in transportation. I think the other thing that really helped us was our engineering processes in general. So our software development processes, our Agile processes, we really didn't change a whole lot. And I think that that was a really good testament to, I think, over the past few years, frankly, honing in on where our inefficiencies are in our software development lifecycle and process, make sure that we tune those and fine tune those and get them to a place where when something like COVID does hit and we are all remote, we don't really skip a beat. And I think that really helped.
Great. Kata?
I'm going to start with the COVID pandemic and the crisis that came around it, supercharged our technology strategy. The Fed, unlike what Ankit and Mike has the luxury of being agile, nimble organizations, is a 100-year-old organization. And our focus is stability, security, and resiliency. So we carefully were investing in the cloud. We're carefully investing in agile ways of working and digital ways of working. And with the COVID pandemic, when it hit, we leveraged all those base investments that we were building upon and actually started implementing capabilities to respond to the economic stimulus packages that we were required to deliver in weeks and days versus months and years. So it was advantageous for us to prove out that the strategy will work because now we have use cases to point to say it could be successful. We can go safely to the cloud and we can apply agile ways of working in a 100-year-old organization.
Gotcha. Next question is going to be kind of tough. Where did you guys struggle when this happened? I mean, you all sound like you had good things in place to be resilient, but there had to be things that were particularly difficult or challenging, or something you had to change direction on, either operationally or to your consumers for quickly adjusting. So speak to me a bit about a challenge that you guys had and how you overcame that challenge. Ankit, we'll start with you this time.
Yeah, I mentioned a strength of ours was the cloud, but it also, we didn't really know what an onset of major health systems coming onto our platform all at once and really increasing our ride volume and volume across all of our systems would do to our cloud infrastructure. And so I don't know if we were necessarily as understanding of where our true kind of breaking points were, and we had to iterate on that very quickly. I think that was a big part of it. I think the other part that being in healthcare in particular, really understanding what a pandemic even means and how we pivot our software and our product to support a pandemic that we were learning about in real time. And what were some of those product enhancements that we needed to make early on to help our transportation companies, our healthcare systems navigate this pandemic as it relates to the industry.
Gotcha. Great. Kata?
Sure. I think, like Ankit, volume was one of our challenges. I mean, we processed 21 trillion worth of treasury auctions $100 billion of loans for the payment protection program. And we were getting hit with unprecedented volume from the market and the street. So scaling our systems, and many of those are legacy systems, trying to take advantage of modern technology intertwined with legacy systems to allow us for that scale and volume. Another area of challenge/opportunity, supervisors usually land in banks to do the supervision work, review paperwork, and review some documentation to regulate banks. Well, with the pandemic, they cannot parachute into the building to do their job. So trying to change the business process and create the technology to support a new model of working to do the job that we do, which is supervising financial institutions, was an opportunity and a challenge as well, because we're changing the wheels on the bus while the bus is running.
Did that have any impact to sort of the run side of your organization, the operational side of your organization, in terms of testing, automated deployment, things that allowed you to deploy or affect change more quickly? And has that changed forever, you moving forward, in terms of how fast and how agile you can be?
Exactly. Never waste a crisis. Yeah. So we had investments in technology to automate testing. And again, we super boosted, brought teams together to actually start doing more of that versus less of that. And now, to your point, we have that foundation that we can build upon and drive more towards agile delivery models across the organization.
That's great. That's a big win. How about you, Mike?
Yeah, I think from as Ankit and Gada mentioned, like, I think we did a very good job in where, like, agile was not just a software development approach. We kind of took more of an agile approach now as a business and an enterprise and as a company, and we're able to kind of really just kind of operate in a much more nimble way. I think some of the challenges that existed early on were just like some cultural challenges that we had in terms of, we're used to being in offices, and we had a couple different offices, and we communicated certain ways. And now that everybody was working remotely, like, how do we change just some of our processes, some of our interactions, find kind of a new norm for us to operate going forward, where we felt like we were in touch and communicating and able to progress as we needed to. And I think we quickly did that, and that was great. But we did have to rethink some of our processes. One of the processes that we had to rethink was recruiting. We normally had people come into the office, go through a recruiting process, meet with different people. And now we wanted to grow, during COVID, and really invest in building out our team. So we had to really rethink, like, how do we go and do that from a remote standpoint? So I think it was a good opportunity for us to just look at our current processes, think about how do we pivot, look at current processes in terms of, where we get together in conference rooms and go through status, like, how do we do that now a little bit more offline, and where we're not always, in person and in contact with each other.
Great, Mike. I'm going to stick with you as I go to the next question then, because I'm going to build on that. You're speaking very operationally, process, internal. What about as it affects your customer base and who interacts with your services? One of the things that we've seen is that the expectations of consumers have radically changed. It's as simple as touchless interfaces and feeling safe and secure, but then it can get much more complicated with virtual queuing, more virtual interactions, machine learning, so we know preferences and patterns and behavior before they arrive. There's lots of different shifting expectations. So I guess my question to you is, one, did you change any of the more functional aspects of what you're delivering? And will that continue to change moving forward? Do you see this as a bump that will recede, or are you going to keep going along that same trajectory now that something's changed?
I think we'll definitely go on the same trajectory and really continue to focus on some things. And we honed in on a couple key things, like, one, investing in areas where we've got direct customer communications and expanding the channels by which we can communicate, so that we're more in touch with a customer, and not relying on them having to call into a call center for any kind of operational request. So we looked more towards, how do we provide the customer with more self-service capabilities? And that was one where we understood we had underinvested in terms of our mobile capabilities. We had mobile capabilities, but I'd say we quickly recognized we needed to invest more. And so we increased like our number of like mobile engineers by a factor of at least 5 in terms of our capabilities. And I would say our cadence in terms of mobile releases also increased. So we quickly pivoted and understood like that's the channel by which people are going to communicate with us, and how do we invest more. Some of the other things that we continue to invest in are things that provide greater flexibility, greater scale, the customer experience, as we talked about. And then we also looked at things where we might not be able to control the recession and what's happening from a COVID and the impact of the economy. But what we can do is prepare ourselves better so that when things do turn around, we're in a position to really accelerate our growth and accelerate, the opportunities we have to grow the customers, to grow our revenue, to increase our scalability.
Gotcha. Ankit, this seems to be like a real obvious one for Round Trip, right? Because you're dealing with human beings in a time of high sensitivity in terms of safety and increased expectations of customer engagement. So how did you guys change? And again, do you see that as a trend that you're going to continue to evolve on, or do you feel like you've arrived at a destination?
Yeah, it is really interesting being in healthcare and that healthcare spaces as this pandemic has taken over. I think a few things that we learned really early on is how critical it was for us to understand what the problem truly is that's happening out there. We had to, I mentioned this a little earlier, we had to pivot very quickly in our product to make sure that transportation providers knew exactly when they were transporting a COVID positive patient or someone that was potentially being COVID positive, when nursing staff and hospitals were receiving those. We made a lot of changes and investments as it relates to our product, our infrastructure, and servicing all of that. And I don't think that trajectory is going to change. I think that it's going to continue. And I do believe that this is something that we'll all take with us. But the changes that we made and the fine tuning that we did over the course of 2020 as a learning experience is something that we're going to continue to build on. And I don't think it's going to be a pivot for us.
Gotcha. Gada, you spoke a lot about operationally scale, which was really impressive how quickly you guys could respond to that demand. Was there anything from a functionality standpoint in terms of the different user segments that you have and how you had to interact with them?
Sure. Yeah, I think, our functionality is not immediately visible to the consumer. We are the payment rail. So anytime you get a paycheck, people who get Social Security are using our rails. Consumer expectations are shifting. They're expecting more real-time settlement, real-time money transfer. I mean, you see the Venmos and the Zelles of the world, which is not exactly real-time, but getting closer. So our flagship program for that is FedNow, which is the real-time payment systems, and driving towards a real-time settlement between wire transfers, or a real-time settlement between a person-to-person payment is what we're driving towards because of that consumer expectation shift. We're extending our operating hours for our big wire system, again, responding to market demands, extending hours for our current legacy, person-to-person or bank-to-person wire system. So that's how we're shifting our functionality to respond to financial industry disruption, consumer expectation changes, and definitely technology disruption in the area of the financial systems.
Gotcha. I liked your quote before. I'm going to butcher it, but something about never waste a good disaster, something like that. I think that was an interesting takeaway. I think it's so common for people to batten down the hatches and get a little bit conservative when a crisis hits, especially like a pandemic that we haven't seen in our lifetime. So I guess the question for everyone is, over the past year, how did you within your organizations really get the budget you needed to innovate? Right? To get the buy-in from the business side that it's worth spending money on these things in the immediate term as opposed to weathering the storm and then innovating. How did you guys make that happen, and how were you a change agent in your organization? Ankit, we'll start with you.
Yeah, this is something that I think is fundamentally a part of our culture, is being a product-centric and tech-centric and focused company. So there wasn't really a need to influence and get the voice of executive leadership on board. I think what did change though was just as a younger company, financial runway and just making sure that we had enough. We ended up doing a bunch of different things on the executive leadership side to make sure that we were prepared to weather the storm, that I think paid dividends where we are today and into the future and the financial health of our company. I don't think we would have done that if we hadn't. I don't think we'd be where we are today in the same position if we hadn't taken that approach.
Is innovation and generating those ideas a separate function in your organization, like an idea lab, or is it part of everything you do, or is it a little from column A and a little from column B?
It's actually embedded in everything that we do. It's not a separate function of our team. It's a core focus that we have on our technology team, and frankly in the entire company, where we always want to make sure we're learning. We're doing design sprints with our external customers, and we're truly understanding where our product is fitting inside of a very complex healthcare system.
Gotcha. So Mike, same question to you. How are you able to innovate in a time of uncertainty?
Yeah, I think for us, one of the things we did, and just kind of even backing up a little bit to like our executive leadership, we did sit down and really kind of looked at what was going on, and of course, one of the initial priorities is kind of making sure that we're in good shape in terms of the pandemic and what was going on. But then we also really quickly said we may not be able to control like what 2020 looks like in the short term, but our goals and what we're trying to do for the next several years haven't changed. And so if we want to really still continue to focus on those goals and growing, a world-class organization and building out our products, this is an opportunity for us to really just double down and invest. And I'm grateful that we did, and we looked at it as an opportunity to really increase and accelerate our ability to kind of grow the organization. So we quickly kind of moved into a faster gear in terms of hiring, building out our engineering teams. We've more than doubled actually since COVID first hit a year ago, the size of our engineering team, which has been fantastic. But going back to your question on innovation too, I think for us, it really does stem as our overall company. We try to kind of pride ourselves on not building out silos within our organization, but really kind of focusing on like, what are the things that we're trying to accomplish? What are those objectives? And those become kind of missions that we become focused on. And then we organize cross-functional teams on those. So there's a lot of ideas of, here's what we do today, but more importantly, like, what do we want to be, next year, the year after, and where are we trying to go ultimately? And how do we get there quicker and do it, faster than our competition is going to do? So I think it's really embedded in everything that we do, and it's not coming from just one department, but it's really kind of coming from a cross-functional team who are helping to kind of set the direction that we're moving forward.
Gotcha. Gada, you're a leader in a much different type of organization with the Federal Reserve. So I don't pretend to know. Was there similar pressure in terms of some people feeling a need to weather the storm and some feeling a need to innovate? How was that pressure felt within your organization, and how did you guys work to becoming innovative in a difficult time?
Sure. So I would bucket our innovation to 3 categories. Category 1 is the innovate in the way we work in response to the pandemic. And those require trade-offs between investments we would have done, for example, in buildings and office space and travel that we did not do in 2020, and we diverted that to investments in technology. The second is a small I innovation, which is an expectation in any team that runs within IT to continue to innovate on their products. The big I is an investment that we're making. I just hired a chief innovation officer for the Fed. She joined a couple of weeks ago, and 2022 will be a year of investment in the big I space. So more to come, but that's how sort of we navigated the innovation formula and the budget formula in 2020.
Gotcha. So let's look forward a little bit, looking into the rest of 2021. Given what we've learned, I don't want to focus too much looking backwards. Looking forward, I've seen a lot of companies recently being very bullish on the next 12 months in terms of innovation and reaching customers in new ways. I'm curious if you guys feel a sense of excitement right now moving forward, trepidation? Are we kind of testing the waters? And if you are feeling a little bit excited about where things are going within your organization, help me understand some of the innovative, interesting, cool things, either operationally or functionally, that you guys are thinking of to sort of hockey stick. You know, we took advantage of this radical change last year. How are we all said on the call, we're looking as that as a trajectory, not a bump. So tell me a little bit what you see step 2 here. Like what's the N+2 on this? Mike, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so for us, we have spent a lot of time actually just thinking through. We focused on our core credit card product over the past couple of years as we've been a startup, and now that we've gotten more traction in that space and we're starting to really kind of ramp up, we're also now looking at and we've kind of used like our agile kind of working as a company throughout COVID as a way to just quickly kind of launch new products and learn, and then quickly pivot and expand on those. So we've got products that we're in the process of launching, this week actually, that we are going out, as well as ones that we're planning to release over the next 2 months. So we'll continue to kind of expand on those additional products and innovate in that space, get the learnings, and quickly decide like where we want to move forward on those products and expand them. I see for sure we will probably consider other products as well. And figure out like if there's other areas we want to make investments in. The thing that drives a lot of what we do is the data and the insights that we gather from the data. So we're constantly looking at our data. We're applying machine learning algorithms against it, but we're also spending a lot of time just analyzing it, analyzing what's the consumer doing, what are their needs, what's their behavior, and then how do we respond to that. So that's a key part of our innovation as well, which is how do we kind of take the data that we have, generate some insights from it, and use it to help drive what we want to do going forward.
Gotcha. Got a same question. What are you looking at in terms of continuing this momentum of innovation and positive change?
Sure. Hybrid work is a key theme. So using AI ML to digitize work and create a more digital work experience for our employees. I mentioned real-time payment system. That's a priority. The consumer expectations and the industry expectations is moving there. The cloud has proven to be useful for us. So we're going to advance the multi-cloud strategy and rationalize our applications to leverage more SaaS solutions versus in-house developed solutions. And of course, around that all, a very strong cybersecurity program to make sure that we have security, resiliency, and soundness for the financial systems for the United States.
Great. Yeah, I had a similar thought with cloud migration. You can think about all the frameworks and toolkits and stuff that's available and sort of everything as a service. But it kind of came to me, I guess, a little bit over the summer about the impact of that to application rationalization. When you have a portfolio of a couple hundred applications and services, letting some naturally sunset and rebuilding others, having a handful of really robust cloud platforms really allows you to reduce the number of technologies you're supporting. So it's interesting to hear you to say that.
I think you're absolutely right, Vinny. That's sort of the analysis that the teams are going through to say what platforms are significant and relevant to us, that we can rationalize the thousands of applications that we have in our ecosystem. So that's part of our hybrid cloud / SaaS strategy that we're looking at.
Gotcha. Ankit, what's in the future for you guys?
Yeah, there's a lot. I think we are both we're very cautiously optimistic about the future of getting out of this pandemic, getting back to what was life before, and frankly healthcare before. Healthcare will forever be changed, I think, too, with telemedicine and everything. But we don't believe it's going to affect the need for transportation as much. There's still the need for follow-up visits, for testing, and all of those things. Some of the things that we're really investing in and looking forward to, similar to what Mike said, is in our data. There's a lot of data insights that we capture across many different parts of transportation and healthcare, and we believe that we've got a lot of insights that we can start to bring into our product and also provide as additional service offerings. There's certainly new product features and everything to strengthen our position in the market. And I think also there's fundamentally a larger shift in the partnerships and health systems that we're working with. So, I encourage everyone to follow Round Trip on LinkedIn and the social channels. We're going to be announcing some pretty incredible partnerships here in the next few months. And I think that's going to really drive us to the next level.
Great. Yeah, each of you have mentioned data in some respect and cloud in some respects. I'm curious, I have a hypothesis that when it comes to data, 80% of it is data engineering still. It's making sure you're getting enough data quickly enough from enough sources. It's properly vetted, into the right pipeline, and governed the correct way, with compliance and other issues. And the 20% of the 80-20 rule is, the actionable insights and the machine learning. I guess challenging myself by asking you this question, do you see that division between the data engineering, the collecting and the perfecting of the data, versus machine learning? And where are you in terms of maturity in that? Are you just solid in your data engineering and you guys are creating actionable insights all the time and your machine learning models? Or are you perfecting the one and still able to do the other while it's getting better? I'm kind of looking sort of a state of the nation as we look at data and machine learning. Mike, you're smiling, so I'll start with you.
Sure. Yeah, it's a topic that we talk about often too, and how do we scale? Data engineering is very much around explicit data pipelines and data going from point A to point B, and how do we do that in as automated and as real time of a process as possible? We're leveraging quite a bit more of like streaming capabilities, where as data is generated from transactions and different events going on in the business and with the consumers, it's automatically flowing into our environments and going where it needs to go so that we can kind of tap into it. So I think it's a constant balance, and I don't think that there will ever be a place where we have, don't have one or the other. Like, we're going to have machine learning that we apply, but that only gets applied once we've mastered what we're doing from a data engineering standpoint, which is making sure that we're ingesting the right data, that we understand that data, we're structuring it the right way, we put the right governance and controls around it. We understand what the quality of that data is, and also, related to compliance, like what can we use, what can't we use, and for what intended purpose. And then the machine learning is really about how do we take the large volumes of data and make sense out of it and put it to use for a particular purpose. And it could be for risk decisioning, it could be for marketing purposes, it could be for how do we handle things from an operational standpoint. So I think we'll have a kind of a constant balance between the data engineering aspect of what we're doing and then more the data science or machine learning aspect of it. But you really can't have one without the other, in my opinion.
How is consumer data privacy playing into that strategy for you?
It very much fits into it. We have to be kind of cognizant of what data do we have, how was it collected, what permissible use do we have for it, and to make sure that we're applying it the right way. And it may mean that that we have certain data that we feel comfortable using, and other data where we can use it for a particular purpose, but we can't extend that purpose to other areas. So I think we very much put a lot of controls and a lot of stewardship and governance around all that. I think the other thing that we want to start to work on too is how do we put a little bit more control into the consumer's hands, where they have better visibility and transparency into what data is being captured, how is it being used, and they can provide a little bit more permissioning around the usage of the data.
Gotcha. Yeah, so got a same question. Sort of maturity. I mean, I would imagine you guys are just swimming in data.
Yes.
So I guess where are you on that journey? I would imagine you're pretty robust, and are you able to turn that into machine learning actionable insights?
Yeah, no, that's great. And yes, the words I use is we're swimming in data. And right now our strategy is to focus on the 20%, going from the analytics and using incremental use cases rather than trying to boil the ocean. So we're working with the business lines to identify those use case opportunities and start working with them to deliver like 90-day sprints, value added outcome, and then continue to mature the analytics practice within the organization.
Gotcha. Great. Ankit, I would imagine that as it relates to predictive models, that would be really beneficial to round trip. So I'm curious how you value the more predictive aspect of machine learning over the deterministic models of straight querying, more traditional databases.
Yeah, Vinny, this is actually a core focus of ours right now. I think one thing that we're really focused on, we've got a pretty incredible data engineering team, and I think the one thing they've helped us do is create a really robust data warehouse. But that's just the beginning. So getting all of the data that we get hundreds of thousands of patient records into our system. Now really understanding and kind of pivoting on those data points across all of the different other data points that we capture is going to be really key for us to understand how we can then provide those predictive insights back to our end users, the healthcare workers that are using our app every single day, our transportation companies. It's going to predict volume. It's going to be able to predict population analytics. These are things that are really important to a healthcare system, but also, frankly, to an entire market, right, that is dealing with healthcare transportation across a variety of different outpatient and inpatient facilities.
I imagine with HIPAA and everything else, your consumer data privacy has to be super robust as well.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time making sure that, and frankly, a lot of personnel training as well to make sure that all of our data is protected. We do operate under HIPAA compliance, so we are fully HIPAA compliant. Our data is treated as such as well, and so it is. We always have to keep that in mind when we are trying to share our data or our analytics across a market and truly understand those trends.
Gotcha. We had a question come in the chat, so I'm going to ask this, and then I'll let you guys just, if someone just wants to jump in, raise their hand, whatever else, who has an answer for this one. With the growing reliance on software as a service, how do you balance customizing to the unique needs of your customer base while minimizing technical debt? Anybody want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I think I'll jump in. I think technical debt is always present in everything that we do. I think we will make decisions, particularly as we operate in an agile way, where in order to accomplish certain short-term objectives and things that we want to outcomes that we want to work towards, we will make design decisions, and a result of that is it could incur tech debt for what we want to do long term. I think we need to balance the right approach between how do we really understand what is our use case, and not only the use case for what do we have today, but also what do we think it might be a year from now, 2 years from now. There's an approach of, for certain things, we may know that ultimately we do want to build our own proprietary solution to kind of get us and meet our very specific use cases that we have, but we also might have speed to market by going with a SaaS platform that provides that capability, and we can implement that, get it up and running, and recognize that we're always in a learn fast kind of mode, that we can generate those learnings, speed to market in terms of providing the functionality, and that and those insights can provide the details that we need to kind of go build that proprietary solution that we want longer term. So there is always going to be some technical debt. I think the quicker that we can focus on building solutions and recognizing what those are and being agile, the quicker we can pivot to things. I like to equate what we're building from a flexibility standpoint is lots of microservices, lots of components, and I think of technology a lot as Legos, where there are a bunch of different interconnected pieces. We know how we can put things together, and just as quickly as we can put things together, we can take them apart. And so the ability to quickly take things apart kind of handles some of that tech debt related things, but it also creates a whole new world in terms of innovation. So if we've got a lot of interconnected pieces that we can stack together, it gives us a lot of freedom for coming up with a new product and just figuring out, okay, we've got these 20 components, how do we assemble them the way that we want to get what we need very quickly? So I think it's a combination of things that we need to look at, but SaaS platforms can provide a way to get to market very quickly and get those learnings, but to do it in a flexible and more of a componentized way.
Yeah, I mean, as an architect, I want to be very specific about the term technical debt, right? Because you could put in a SaaS platform, and doing configuration on a SaaS platform isn't, to me, technical debt. It's part of a multi-tenant model that's certainly better than the old PeopleSoft SAP approach of actually customizing the code and taking a year to do an upgrade, right? I would also say that doing microservices in the cloud specific to your endpoints is not technical debt. If you follow enterprise architecture patterns of high cohesion, low coupling, all the basic things you learn as an architect, it comes down to architecting it correctly as opposed to viewing any kind of customization or configuration as debt. But there is real debt out there, and you see people paint themselves in that corner all the time. So to me, it comes down to that rigor of implementing correctly. Ankit, do you have any? Oh, go ahead, Mike. You have a thought on that?
Yeah, I was going to just chime in one bit. You really can't measure the technical debt until at some point in the future when you realize it doesn't perform the function that you wanted it to. And because you took an agile approach early on, you've accepted that risk that you haven't factored in what you want to do a year from now, 2 years from now into the solution that you're building today necessarily. And so that's kind of the cost. So you get speed of getting something out sooner now, taking an agile approach, but it may be to the detriment of something you want to do a year from now, 2 years from now. I think as long as you build it in a way that you can adapt quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think agile provides that debt. I think cutting corners on how you architect it, implement it, because you're feeling a pressure to move quickly can do that, right? So I think there's a nuance there that as a technical person I would get academic about.
Yeah, Vinny, I agree with you. Good architecture is going to drive good tech debt decisions and implementation decisions. And as we look at SaaS solutions, it's easy to argue that Go standard for some of the common processes like HR, finance, procurement. It's harder to argue when you're dealing with business functionality that's unique to the organization or to the consumer. So having good architecture is the right answer for those scenarios where the business value is so much higher to deliver the customization or the uniqueness than keeping it vanilla at the SaaS level.
Yeah, why would you want to hand build your own CRM?
Exactly.
A lot of people who do that well. Ankit, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's funny. I think in a growing company, you're never going to get away from tech debt, and I think that it's really important to know that tech debt's okay. Like every good software as a service platform is going to have some tech debt, and that's all right. It means you're never going to build something perfect the first time, and you never know everything that you can't predict the future either. So there's a little bit of uncertainty anytime you architect a solution, no matter how good you architect it. I think what is really important though is creating the right software development processes to address the tech debt, and do it in a regular way and not a way where it catches you by surprise. So making sure that you're documenting tech debt and that it's okay, even if, an engineer or an engineering team or a product team says, we're going to develop this and it's going to be quick and dirty, but here's what we know we're probably going to come into later on. That at least provides all of us the opportunity to plan for, okay, let's get this out. Let's get this in front of the customer. Let's learn and iterate on this product feature or new paradigm of software engineering. But let's also go back and clean our mess up later on. And let's create a plan for it. And I think if you can do that, managing that tech debt shouldn't be as arduous of a process as it has been, I think, in the past for a lot of other teams.
Yeah, I think about it as well-structured technical debt, right? I mean, if you think about it from a financial standpoint, we've all taken on debt from time to time, but taking on debt to cover gambling debts is different than a mortgage, right? So it's what's your intention? How do you structure it? I mean, I look at RPA. RPA can solve some problems, but by definition, it's technical debt. You're doing high coupling at a view tier. That is technical debt. You lose control. There's no SLAs, et cetera. So if you don't know your way out, you shouldn't go in. But if you're putting technical debt in, you should have a plan to handle those problems when they come up. Great. So I think we're at time, 12:45 exactly. So we'll pause here for any questions. Before we do, Mike, Ankit, thank you so much for being on this. Really appreciate your candid input. I'm sure everyone else did as well. You made my job as a moderator really easy, so thank you.
Our pleasure.
Great. So we're open for questions. Lori, I don't know if people just want to type them in. How do you want to facilitate that?
Yes, you can type them in. That would be great. I have a question if no one else does.
Yeah, why don't you get us started?
All right, let me get my video back. Like I said, yeah, so I want to know about, I think Mike, somebody maybe mentioned this a little bit on your talent acquisition strategy. Has the profile of the candidate that you are hiring on your tech team changed at all since COVID?
I don't know that the profile of the candidate necessarily has changed, and at least in terms of what we're looking for. But I think like our perception has changed, and in some of our what we're looking for has changed. I think going into last year, at the beginning of 2020, we were more focused around certain geographies. Like we want to hire somebody for the Richmond office or for the San Francisco office. And I think one thing from COVID is that our ability to work remotely has been super powerful and also empowering for the individual too. And so we're much more receptive now. So our profile in terms of somebody needing to be in those geographies is no longer exists. So we've been hiring in other geographies where people can work wherever they're comfortable working. And I envision like later this year, hopefully, that we can establish a little bit more of a pattern where we might come together once a month, once a quarter for a couple days, group and really figure out like where we're going from a roadmap standpoint. And then everybody can kind of go back to working remotely if that's what works for them. So the notion that people need to be in a physical office, is something that we've relaxed quite a bit, and I think we will continue to do so going forward.
A question for you on that, Mike. Does that put pressure on you then for worrying about attrition within your own organization? Because presumably your employees have that same flexibility to work anywhere in the country without having to relocate now. So it's a double-edged sword. So how do you think of that? Yeah.
Oh, I think that that's where it's on me and the rest of our engineering organization and companies to make it a compelling environment and culture where people really want to be here and stay, and that they've got opportunities. And I feel like so supercharged about like our opportunities at Mission Lane. We've been growing just a ton. There's a ton of opportunities to not only grow as an individual, but to work on some really exciting projects, to work with really cool technology, to engage with the business. And really what we're focused on, everything, and particularly at our stage of a company, everything we do is important to the consumer and to our business as a whole. So there's this really a sense of alignment that what you're working on is really making a difference. So, I think that's something that we as a culture, as we grow, we need to continue to make sure that people really feel good about the culture that we have and they want to be a part of it.
I think it's an excellent way to phrase it. I think it is cultured as well, because and it's really difficult to do too virtually. So you on the one hand, you're going to be hiring from anywhere in the country. Number two, you need to create that aspect of people really believing in your mission and caring about your corporate objectives and strategies. That's I think going to be, and I think Gada, you mentioned a hybrid model moving forward too. I think understanding how to have the people in the organization care about your personal brand and your mission. And two, how do you develop talent when you're not working side by side with them? It's more difficult, I think, to pattern behavior for people when you're remote all the time. How are you guys thinking about that?
So Benny, I think that's a great question, and we're still figuring it out. But in a hybrid mode, a couple of themes that are coming up. One, how do we create inclusivity? So the people in the office versus the people that are on telepresence feel included. So the way we're set office, and there are people that are going to be on the screen, and people who are talking on the sidelines during lunch break, and people who are not included in that conversation. And creating that inclusive environment is going to be important.
It's funny how quickly things changed. I was in 1 year with all the we had this technology before. We had WebEx before and Teams before, but now it's the norm. I was on a call, I think a week ago, and it was a company that had a traditional conference call. So we were on telephones, and it was, hello, who joined? Hello. And it felt like it was technology from 1970. It was like, what are you, like, this is so strange. And it's only been 12 months since that was a norm. So I guess same question to you, Ankit, as it relates to talent development, retention, recruiting.
Yeah, it honestly, it starts with our company culture. And I know that both Mike and Gada have said that if in order to keep and retain the incredible people that we currently have on our team, the only way we can do that is if we embody our core values. We have been very intentional to set the right core values for our company and make sure that it's not just fluff. It's actually something that we live and breathe by every single day. We include it in our in almost every meeting that we have. We include it in all of our quarterly reviews and everything. So I think it's really important that everyone embodies our core values and that we hire and keep people engaged in that way. I think the one part of our core values is really being open and honest with each other. And sometimes it can be really hard in a Zoom world to not be able to read people's faces or body language the whole time because you're not there with them. But in those instances, it's so important to communicate and really truly have an open dialogue around, like, hey, this didn't, what did you mean by this? Or can you explain this a little bit better? Those types of culture where people are safe, feel safe in expressing themselves and their feelings and how they are approaching things. We're all coming at this in a completely different way. In an in-person kind of environment, you have so many more opportunities to look somebody in the eye and kind of know how they're feeling. But in a Zoom world, it's a little difficult. And so I think by embracing that culture head on, and not beating around the bush for certain things or anything like that, but instead really looking at somebody and saying, hey, I didn't appreciate this, or I love the way you did this. Those are things that I think bring us together and ultimately will allow us to continue to keep and maintain talent.
Yeah, good answer. Thank you. It reminded me, I often think that showing a sign of competence and confidence in your work so that people can see you as a valuable contributor is not at odds with also being vulnerable.
Right.
Right. And be willing to show that side. And I think as leaders, as we model that and we're basically allowing that behavior, and we're kind of, we like to say the leaders bring the weather, to the room, to the conference room, to whatever else, and set those expectations. So it's great to hear you voice that, because I think that will bring the most innovation out of your employees as well, because they have it's like a sports analogy. You aren't playing tight, you're playing loose, and you trust your teammates. Yep.
Yeah.